How the United Kingdom will prosper outside the European Union. Hi guys, it's Jason from Liberty Bunker. Now, when people talk about Brexit, it always seems to be economic doom and gloom, but I want to talk about the amazing opportunities that Brexit offers the UK. Now, how do countries become wealthy? Every country in history has gained wealth by running trade surpluses. What this essentially means is you export more goods and services to other countries than you import back from them. If you can run a trade surplus, that means there's wealth accumulating in your country. The problem we have in the UK is we actually run quite a significant trade deficit. Last year, 2018, the UK ran a trade deficit of £31 billion. That means we imported £31 billion more goods and services from the rest of the world than we exported back to them. But what's quite interesting with this data is when you break down where this trade deficit is happening, it's actually happening when we trade with other EU nations. The trade deficit from us trading with the EU is £64 billion a year. That means we imported £64 billion more of goods and services from the EU than we exported back to them. When we look at the rest of the world, excluding the EU, the UK actually runs a trade surplus. The trade surplus is in the region of £33 billion. So we export £33 billion more goods and services to the rest of the world than we imported back from them. But the problem is we have this huge deficit that we run with the European Union. So the European Union is on to an absolute winner with the United Kingdom. Not only are we paying them a £9 billion a year membership fee to be a member of the European Union, we're actually running this huge deficit. So EU countries are exporting loads of stuff to us. We're not really exporting as much back to them, and for that privilege we're paying a huge membership fee. So it's total lunacy. It's an absolute winner. You can see why the EU isn't keen to see the UK go, because they're getting our membership fee and we're also importing a lot more from them than we export back from them. What the UK needs to do, and what Brexit offers as a good opportunity, is to rebalance the balance of trade. So we know in the rest of the world they like our stuff, they like British products and services, because we're already running a trade surplus with the rest of the world. The problem we have is the European Union. Now, if we just cut trade with the European Union overnight, the UK would actually be a trade surplus country. Now, I'm not saying that's a good scenario. You don't want to just cut trade overnight. But if we just take that as a hypothetical situation, the UK would actually be a surplus country because we would be exporting more to the rest of the world than we import from them. Now, we know there's an appetite for UK goods and services outside the EU. The trade surplus we have with the rest of the world shows that. They want to buy our goods and services. Now, this is why trade deals are so crucial for the future success of the UK. We don't want a large institution like the EU doing trade deals on our behalf. We want to be dynamic, we want to be vibrant, we want to be going out there forming our own trade deals with the emerging markets, with frontier markets, China, America, Japan, the countries that already like our products. We don't want the EU operating on our behalf. You know, the EU isn't a particularly forward-looking organisation. Let me take France as an example. You know, France is a very backward, protectionist-looking place. An example of this is Amazon. The French government has been in a perma war with Amazon for about 10 or 15 years now. You know, in France, Amazon isn't even allowed to offer free delivery on its products because the French are so protectionist. You know, I think they're trying to block Amazon Prime deliveries now in France, like same-day deliveries, because they're protectionist. Yeah, that's great. They want to protect their shops, but it's very backward-looking. We want vibrant, dynamic economies. We don't want stale economies like France, protectionism, trying to protect their own little industries. We want to be free-flowing, we want to be dynamic. We want to be trading with Hong Kong, Singapore, very dynamic economies. We don't want dinosaurs like Germany, like France, telling us or negotiating trade deals on our behalf. This is a future vibrant economy, and the UK is going to be much more successful out of the EU than it is in. Now, then people will tell me, yes, but Jason, Brexit is going to trigger a recession. Now, look, there's a global slowdown coming. America is going to be tipping into recession soon. China is going to be tipping into recession. Germany is basically already in recession, as is Italy, as is France. Eurozone's already tipping into recession. This is a global slowdown that is coming. Now, the UK should view this coming recession as an opportunity. Yes, no one likes recessions. Recessions are bad. But since this global slowdown recession is coming anyway, use this as a perfect opportunity to restructure our economy, restructure our businesses. If we have businesses that are too overly dependent on the dinosaur that is the EU, maybe those companies need to restructure. Maybe even some of them will go bankrupt. As terrible as that sounds, if we've got an old institution like the EU that's no longer really viable, some of the businesses that have a lot of trade exposure with the EU, maybe they will have to go bankrupt, and maybe it's perfect opportunities for for redistribution of resources into other businesses that will be trading more with emerging and frontier markets, as well as established markets like America and Japan. So no one likes recessions, but this recession is a good opportunity for the UK to seize and use it as a chance to rebalance the economy and start exporting more goods and services to the rest of the world. Now, when we look at the pound sterling is very weak at the moment. Long term, I favour strong currencies. Strong currency is good for the citizens of a country. It increases their purchasing power. It is essentially a pay rise. If your pound in your pocket buys more than it did yesterday, there's essentially a pay rise. So long term, I don't favour weak currencies, but you could view the current weak sterling as a good short term stimulus for companies that are exporting goods to the rest of the world. The UK is very, very good at the service industry, especially like the financial service industry. We're top rated though. We're up there with America, New York in terms of the financial industry, and that is a real industry that's been leading the UK forward over the last few years. But you shouldn't be over reliant on services. So you want goods, you want physical things you export, and the weak pound is going to be a good stimulus for manufacturing industries that are producing products, especially high-end products, things that the UK is actually particularly good at, is a world leader in very high-end products. We want to boost that segment of our manufacturing industry, and I think the weak pound is a perfect opportunity to seize onto. So we shouldn't squander this devalued pound scenario. We're amazing at the service sector industry, but let's use the weak pound to boost manufacturing in the UK. I'd like to see government trying to support manufacturers who are exporting to the rest of the world, because that is another cornerstone to having a sound UK economy. At the moment, we're a little bit service sector led. We need to go back to our roots, start manufacturing, especially high-end technical products that we're actually very good at doing. Another area of the EU has over-regulation and subsidies and taxes in is the farming industry. Now, the UK has two roads it can go down in a post-Brexit scenario. We can either enjoy cheaper food, because outside the European Union, food imports will be a lot cheaper. We won't be subject to the tariffs that we face at the moment in terms of food. Or another option the UK could have is maybe it wants some tariffs and some subsidies to support UK farmers. But the point is, it's something that the UK can choose itself, rather than having tariffs and subsidies that are forced upon us to protect French farmers. The citizens of the UK, the government, the farmers, we can all come together and formulate a plan that works for British people, for British farmers, the country as a whole, rather than being led by the French. The French farming industry has huge say within the European Union. It doesn't really work for the British. So let's have a farming industry that works for farmers, works for cheaper food prices, generally works all around, but for British people rather than the French. Another opportunity of leaving the European Union is, of course, the fishing industry. Let's take back our waters. Why should UK fishing waters be plundered by other countries from the EU? These are our waters. Even if we don't want to fish them, let the fish stocks replenish. So even if we're like, hey, we've got more fish than we know what to do with, let the fish stocks replenish. We don't need to overfish it if we don't need to. We probably have at the moment, boats coming up from Spain, from France, but essentially plundering UK resources. This is another benefit to leaving the European Union. And one of the big things the UK could really seize upon is corporation tax. Now, corporation tax in the UK at the moment is 19%. That is dropping to 17% in 2020. So the Conservative government can see that reducing corporation tax is only a good thing. However, we're not that competitive on the European stage. Ireland has corporation tax at 12.5%, very low. That's been a real amazing thing for the Irish economy. The islands profited massively off multinational corporations setting up headquarters in Ireland to benefit from lower corporation tax. So why doesn't the UK do something similar? The EU is actually very jealous of Ireland's low corporation tax. Germany aren't happy with it. France aren't happy with it. I think long term, Ireland is actually going to lose the ability to have this low corporation tax rate. If both France and Germany don't like something, it tends to go away, because they're the two powerhouses of the EU. So I think long term, Ireland is going to lose this basically this goose that lays golden eggs. But the UK can seize upon this. We can drop corporation tax to 12.5%, drop it to 10% to attract large companies into the UK. Now, this brings jobs with it. Yes, you're collecting a lower percentage of tax, but if you have more companies moving to the UK to set up headquarters, that's going to be an amazing thing. And if companies see the UK being very pro-business, running low corporation tax, being pro-business, being pro-market. We could really be the equivalent to Hong Kong to China, or like a Singapore, a place that's pro-business, pro-free market, somewhere where companies want to move to because they know they're not going to be taxed to the hilt. They want to come here, create jobs, create industry. I truly believe if the UK government believes in Britain, believes in the British people, believes in British businesses, there's no stopping how successful the UK could be.